This is not about the U.S. versus Russia. This is an interest we share in common as countries. We're all trying to prevent terrorists, non-state actors from getting these materials. Russia, frankly, is, in some ways more vulnerable than the United States because you've got the Chechens and others who, within Russia, who've demonstrated the interest in getting these materials or causing nuclear or radiological attacks. It doesn't even have to come in the U.S. There may be people within the country too, but it may be about preventing people from outside the country. In Russia, this is preventing people from within your own borders from getting this material. So Russia has a very strong interest in preventing that, and the easiest way to do that is to stop using things like highly enriched uranium when you don't need to. Russia has about half the world's highly enriched uranium. Russia's actually done quite a good job in terms of getting material back from other former Soviet states. For instance, it actually took material back from Ukraine a couple years ago, which is good given all the current unrest. And Russia has started to make verbal commitments about how it's willing to make or explore conversion to low enriched uranium from highly enriched uranium. But it seems to condition all this on economic measures and saying we have to judge the economic feasibility of conversion. And other countries haven't done that. They've gone ahead and done the right thing. They haven't sat there and said, well, we need to decide how expensive it is, whether we do this or not. Russia really needs to get on with the job of doing this if it's going to be a responsible global citizen. Well, the United States has, in terms of the civil material, it's converted all the reactors that it can with current fuel. So the only problem now for the U.S. is not money, is not this economic feasibility, it's a technical problem. Russia has some of the same technical problem. There's some reactors in Russia that can't convert for technical reasons, and that's perfectly understandable. You have to wait till the capabilities are there. But there are reactors in Russia that could be converted now, that could be shut down, that this highly enriched uranium, which is the most dangerous bomb material, would not be employed in. But Russia doesn't want to spend the money to do it. Ultimately, we should do both. But the first most vulnerable material is probably the civil material. Presumably, if it's on a military base or it's in weapons, you've got other reasons for people to guard these facilities. On the other hand, if you're in a university or in other institution which is purely civil, there tends to be less security. So the first thing has to be the civil material. But yes, we need to all look at the weapons material as well. I would note that in the U.S. progress report, the U.S. has said next year, or actually this year, they're going to work with the French and the British. All three of those countries have nuclear weapons materials to say, what can we do about security for these weapons materials? Now, I would like sometime in the future for Russia and China to join that process as well, the other big nuclear weapons countries under the Non-Proliferation Treaty and in the UN Security Council. If those 5 countries could get together and say, how do we secure those weapons materials, that would be a great step. And then we could also add countries like Pakistan and India to that list. Well, think about Fukushima. That was caused purely by nature, a tsunami, an earthquake. But you could imagine a terrorist could do a lot of the same damage intentionally. And so, what happened at Fukushima? We didn't have huge numbers of people killed or injured, but we've had, clearly a national disaster and large areas that people can't live with anymore. That's what we could look at in the Middle East. Well, aside from Israel, which has its own nuclear weapons materials and weapons, but also presumably has fairly good security, but we don't know. The other Middle Eastern states generally have not produced the most dangerous fissile materials. They haven't produced the highly enriched uranium or the plutonium, partly because they don't have declared weapons programs, or I should say separated plutonium, and they haven't had as many kind of research reactors because they just haven't had the kind of nuclear complex that you have in more developed countries. As they go along, we hopefully these countries are not going to start using those materials because now we have safer materials that you can use in those programs. The danger, I would say, in the Middle East is probably the danger of nuclear sabotage, more than these kinds of getting the materials. People attacking, say, a nuclear power plant, and that would be a danger as if you develop a nuclear industry.